I think what Pinterest is going to have to do is I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say it's going to have to shift its business model. And I think what you're seeing the CEO talk about here is exactly where my mind was going, which is Pinterest has to turn into an AI powered shopping assistant. The next frontier of search isn't even like visual search, it's voice search. So like if I can get on Pinterest and I can talk to like the native AI and say, here's what I'm looking for, show me options, I think voice leads to visual. And so if they can figure that out, I think they're going to be well positioned to succeed. Hello and welcome to Market Outsiders. It's Thursday, November 6th. Today, we are not talking about elections or politics. So if you've been overwhelmed with the news this week, then you found a safe space. We're just going to talk about business today. And we're talking about Pinterest specifically. I guess Pinterest is considered social media. We're going to dive into that in just a minute. Before we talk about Pinterest's latest earnings reports and how the company is trying to tie its results to tariffs, doesn't necessarily seem obvious on the surface. We're going to unpack that. Before we do, go ahead and leave us a rating, review, and subscribe to Market Outsiders if you have not already. We really, really appreciate your comments, your feedback, your reviews. They help us let the algorithm know that you're finding this helpful, and then the algorithm shares this with more people. So if you found our conversations helpful and you think other people could benefit as well, go ahead and leave that rating, review, and subscribe. Jenny Ray, we're talking about Pinterest today. Are you a Pinterest power user? I feel like moms in their 40s are like the target demo for Pinterest. Is that not true?
You should never call a woman in her 40s. You should always be like, mom's in her 30s. And then let me say, hey, I'm not actually in my 30s, but I'm close. Thanks for that.
What I meant to say was like young, hip moms.
That's what I'm trying to get to. Yeah, there's a way to position this. Come on, Naman, we can do better. First of all, good morning. Excited to be with you today. And, reflecting on this, I've had about 5 to 6 minutes to think about my Pinterest usage. So I was a Pinterest user. I would not have ever considered myself to be a Pinterest power user. I don't think I've ever personally posted anything on Pinterest. So at best, I've been a Pinterest lurker. I've been eyes on Pinterest. I've been the product, but I have not actually been a producer. And I went through an era that I would kind of call my recipe era, when I was like, I've got my bank of my mom's recipes. My grandmother was a cookbook collector. And when I say cookbook collector, I mean like 80 pallets of cookbooks, like lots.
How many cookbooks is that?
A lot of cookbooks. Too many. I actually got the opportunity to speak at her funeral, and I said, like, whatever the number was that she had, it was too many. The definition was somewhere before what she reached. She would collect cookbooks from, church bazaars, right? Like these really obscure, interesting places. And she read them for culture as well as for recipes. And I kind of went through my Pinterest version of that era when I was trying to define, like, what kind of food do I make? What is the variety amount that we do in our households? Am I an ingredients-led cook, or am I a recipe-led cook? Do I go to the farmer's market and then decide to build something out of it? And I found Pinterest to be really an active assistance in that. And it's been more than 5 years. So I don't even know if I have the app installed on my phone right now. And so I don't know if that's what we're going to talk about today, about the user base of Pinterest and some of the use case of Pinterest. But I've always felt like Pinterest has, whereas a lot of platforms do a pretty good job of building double-sided usage, where they have like the content producers and then the content engagers. I feel like Pinterest has always been a little bit more like window shopping. It was a little too easy to just engage with the content without actually participating in some way. And so I'm really excited to talk about it today. What about you, Naman? Tell me. Pinterest? Yes, no.
I can honestly tell you that I don't know if I've ever used Pinterest. I became aware of Pinterest when I was dating my wife because she used it for recipes the way that you're describing. And then I think she probably planned our entire wedding off Pinterest. That much I can tell you. So I was an observer of a power Pinterest user. But I think once recipes moved to like Instagram Reels and TikTok, and once the wedding was over, I think I've noticed that she's not really a Pinterest user anymore either. So there was like a specific season and a specific use case where she found Pinterest really helpful. But, my N of one and just my observation tells me that if you're not in a certain season of life, then you might not be as an engaged user of Pinterest as you would be of other social media platforms.
Yeah. 40-year-old moms, right?
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, you nailed it. I am in my 40s and I am a mom, so I'm not offended. But just a few tips for a Thursday morning.
There's a difference between being true and being right. So that much I can tell you after being married for almost 10
I
years.
was going to say, now I know that you're a married man. Yeah.
Let me go ahead and pull up Pinterest's earnings here, and let's see why we're talking about Pinterest today. And so you'll see this headline here if you're watching on Spotify or YouTube. Pinterest shares plunged 21%, and that's the second worst day ever for Pinterest stocks. And this is what I found interesting about the headline: as tariffs drag on ad revenue. And so when I first saw the headline, I was like, oh boy, here's another business that's blaming tariffs for underperformance. Does this actually
Like
make
that
sense or
that
not?
link is not obvious to me, right? That like the concept of tariffs dragging on ad revenue for a business that is digital and is offering digital ads is not obvious to me.
It,
So I hope that we're going to talk about whether or not this is a faux headline grabber or an actual issue. But what was your
that's
hot take at the beginning?
well, that's why I wanted to talk about it. The only way this makes sense to me is if your ad base is so concentrated on like retailers that are exposed to tariffs. Does that make sense? Like if like the only advertisers that you have would be businesses or companies that have large tariff exposure. And that could make sense to me. Like I could see, furniture retailers being big advertisers on Pinterest. I could see like I don't know, like you've got like collectibles, you've got like little like knickknack kind of manufacturers that would be advertising on Pinterest. Like if that is your ad base, then okay, maybe like tariffs play a bigger role on your ad revenue than like other platforms. But it was just a little bit surprising to me that Pinterest would be so exposed to such like a limited and narrow advertiser base. And so you could blame tariffs if you want, but to me, that concentration in your ad relationships was a business risk that you didn't properly manage. Um, that would really be my takeaway from this headline more than like, hey, like let's just blame tariffs on everything. Does that
Here's one more
explanation?
thing. Well, let me add
Yeah,
one other kind of counterpoint why I was kind of like this doesn't make any sense is that even if that were true, right? Even if you have major retailers and product producers that are some of your key folks, the decision of where to cut cost is not necessarily going to be in advertising. It doesn't make any sense to cut off the mouth that feeds the entire operation. So if you're thinking about what you're going to do, your first likely goal is to pass on price increases to test your consumer resilience. And then your second focus is to push on suppliers into the product, right? So to say, hey, how could I produce what I'm producing or purchase what I'm purchasing for cheaper or acquire different payment terms, right? Thinking about the supplier relationships, like this advertiser relationship to me does not feel like the first place that you go to say like, hey, I'm just not going to advertise anymore because it feels like cutting off your nose to spite your face. And so even if the risk was there, to me, unless you're seeing that broad spectrum issue across the board, then and I haven't seen that. I haven't seen data on that. I haven't seen data to the contrary, but I also haven't seen this being something that Google has said like PS, right? Our ad revenue is now down 20%. Facebook hasn't said our ad revenue is down 20%. So I was suspicious at the beginning because of that. Now I could be wrong, but when I thought through the chain of events that would have to happen for me to cut my advertiser spend, that was also part of my thesis.
and I think we're saying the same thing here, which is we think this is more of a Pinterest problem than a tariff problem, right? And so,
Correct.
like Pinterest management problem is like you have a very like narrow and concentrated advertiser base that you didn't diversify. And then your other problem is that like when companies make decisions on like where they like focus their advertising spend, you are on the chopping block when other platforms are not on the chopping block. And so you haven't either done a good enough job of proving ROI or differentiating your platform or differentiating your audience so that it becomes an easy decision to cut you. Because like these advertising budgets, to your point, aren't going to zero. So like these retailers, these brands are still spending money. They're just not spending money with you. That's a big problem, and that's a you problem. You can't just blame tariffs and advertisers for that. So let's dive into the numbers here just for a little bit. So third quarter sales in the U.S. and Canada are about $800 million. A little bit smaller than I would have expected, to be honest with you.
Not
Um,
even a billion. I mean, that's
not even a billion.
like, why are we even talking about a number so small? $1 billion is yesterday's million, you know?
100%. Well, and I'm also really interested that like this article talks about sales in the US and Canada and
Mhm.
why they're splitting out North America versus just overall earnings. Um, the article doesn't explain that. So let's just look here. Finance chief's talking about the company facing pockets of moderating ad spend. We've already talked about that. It looks like what's happening is that like the drop in ad spend is really happening in the U.S. and Canada, and so that's why the article's calling out earnings just in those two geographies. But there's not a whole lot of additional context here. There's a lot of overview here about how banks are lowering their price targets following this earnings report, and so analysts are just re-rating the stock is all that means.
But Naman, if you go up, I just want to again like cast a little bit of suspicion on the tie that this article is making here. Now, if
Oh,
I
100%.
were an ad buyer, right, I would. This is exactly what I would say if I was cutting my contract with Pinterest. I'd say, look, we're facing tariff-related issues. We have to be conservative about what we spend. But again, I haven't seen a lot of these ad buyers, and we've done multiple. This one beats expectations, that one beats expectations, this one beats expectations. Kind of conversations around how consumer spending is actually really strong. I think that is that tariffs seem to be the stalking horse in a strategic decision to move away from Pinterest here.
I think so too, right? And I think if I was like in leadership at the company, 100%, I'd be like, internally, I'd be like, I know this is us. I know that we haven't done a good enough job of like maintaining these relationships or differentiating our platform. And these guys are just trying to save face a little bit and save the relationship in case, they ever want to come back. And I would think that Pinterest understands that. I 100% agree with you. Like my instinct is always, this is our fault. We can't blame the market for this. We can't blame external factors for this because it's not like that spend is going down to zero. I thought this
Can
was
you talk a
interesting.
little
I'm
bit
just kind
about
of,
the chatbot? Yeah, there's like a message about
yeah.
their chatbot capability. And does Pinterest have its own chatbot, or are we talking about a chatbot on Pinterest?
Nope.
Right.
Nope. So this
So
is a
yeah, talk a little
this
bit
is an
about.
analyst. This looks like this is an analyst who covers the stock and who's
Mhm.
just thinking about the competitive pressures that Pinterest is facing. And so Barton Crockett, who's an analyst at Rosenblatt, looks like he downgraded Pinterest to neutral from like a buy rating. And so his main reason for doing that was Pinterest's ability to compete against chatbots. So, what's the use case for Pinterest? To me, the use case for Pinterest is exploration. Like I am looking for design ideas. I am looking for recipe ideas. I am looking for fashion ideas. Well, where are people going now for ideation? They're going to AI. They're going to chatbots. I'll share a very quick example with you recently. We ended up redecorating our guest room at our house just a few weeks ago. And literally what I did was I took a picture of my room with the existing furniture. I uploaded it to ChatGPT and I said, hey, I want you to think like a mid-century modern designer. Like I'm looking for like this, and this. Like go find me products that kind of fit my criteria that would also go in the size of my room and with like the furniture that's already here. And it gave me options. It gave me links out to where I could buy those products. I was able to go back and forth with it on like, hey, I like this. I don't like this. Have you thought about this? It gave me new ideas that I hadn't thought of before for particular pieces. And like I made buying decisions like wholly based on like that one like back and forth conversation that I had with a chatbot. 10 years ago, I probably would have had to go to Pinterest if I wanted to do that kind of exploration.
Even
And so
two.
even two, right? And so that to me, I think is what this analyst is talking about is there's competition not just from other social media, right? Like we live in an attention economy. And so like what I see happening here is that Pinterest's share of its users' attention is just being downgraded. And so you're not just competing against Facebook, you're not just competing against TikTok or Instagram, you're also competing now against ChatGPT, you're also honestly competing against Netflix. Like any platform that takes your user base's time or attention away from you is a competitive threat. And so chatbots are now just another entrant in that race for user attention and mind share. And I think that it's a fair statement to say that chatbots are a big threat to Pinterest, because now instead of having to scroll, instead of having to search, instead of having to, I don't know, flip through a million mood boards that I don't like, I can have what I do like served right to me.
Naman, can we talk a little bit about that? We talked earlier in an episode about the ChatGPT PayPal integration for users to be able to purchase something directly off of that. And I want to go back to your use case. In your use case, when you got the links from ChatGPT, right now, as far as I understand, ChatGPT isn't monetizing those, and there is no financial incentive for them to serve something to you that they're getting compensated for. As far as you know, for Pinterest's business model, if Pinterest were to recommend something to you, is there any form of compensation, or is their entire revenue base from ads? Right? Is there any form of kind of creator oriented, click link, lick, clink, lick, clinking, dang it, link clicking.
Like
What am I trying to
like
say? Yeah,
what you're trying to say is like, are there like is there
that,
like an affiliate fee model? Is there an affiliate fee model,
exactly.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
understanding is that a bulk of the revenue that Pinterest generates is from advertising. And
Mine,
so,
mine as well. I'm just wondering if there, I think that what you're seeing, and I don't know if there's a super user fee, if there's like a premium user fee. I don't know if there's I don't know if there are any other fees. It would be worth it for somebody to kind of give us a rundown on this, since we're not great users of Pinterest, and therefore part of the challenge that Pinterest is having is that they haven't acquired us as users. But I think that, like, that's one of the questions, right? Is that if ChatGPT is able to multiply its funding models, and Pinterest has never even thought about doing that, then if the eyeballs, and we've seen this certainly even in our business, right? Is that, like, you might have high intent users, but if you're losing eyeballs, your ad revenue is going to be really
mhm,
battled, right? It's going to be it'll be in
yeah,
battle, it'll be challenged.
I think what Pinterest is
So
going to have to
so
do is, I'm
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, it's going to have to shift its business model. And I think what you're seeing the CEO talk about here is exactly where my mind was going, which is Pinterest has to turn into an AI powered shopping assistant. And so, like, to me, like the next frontier of search isn't even like visual search, it's voice search. So, like, if I can get on Pinterest and I can talk to like the native AI and say, here's what I'm looking for, show me options, I think voice leads to visual. And so, if they can figure that out, I think they're going to be well positioned to succeed. And then you have like a very specific use case for having that app on your phone and for being a user of that platform. I think that's the other thing that I've just been thinking about as we've been having this conversation. What's the use case for being on Pinterest? I'm not like connecting with a community. Like, that's what Facebook and Instagram are. I'm not like being constantly stimulated. That's what TikTok is. Like, Pinterest is like, I'm exploring. Well, okay, there
Mhm.
are other places for me to go to like find new things to explore. Like, what problem does Pinterest solve for me? And I think if they are able to like turn into that AI powered shopping assistant, well, now there's a very specific problem that they can solve for me. And even if I'm not a power user, even if I'm not a legacy Pinterest user, there's maybe a reason for me to like be a user. And so I think that that's the pivot that they're going to have to make.
If you run a small or medium sized business, you know how fast cyber risks are evolving. That's why I use Nord products myself. And for businesses, there's Nord Stellar. It's a threat exposure management platform that helps you spot cyber threats before they become full blown incidents. Nord Stellar combines data breach and dark web monitoring, attack surface management, and cyber squatting protection, all in one platform. It gives you real time visibility into leaked credentials, exposed assets, and impersonation attempts so you can act before attackers do. Think of it as seeing what hackers see and fixing it first. Right now, Nord Stellar has an exclusive Black Friday offer. Unlock 20% off with code BLACKFRIDAY20, but only until December 10th, 2025. Visit nordstellar.com/simplified to secure your business today.
I am also just questioning, and this is actually not just applied to Pinterest, but other platforms as well. What is the benefit of Pinterest being an intermediary? The intermediary benefit in the age of AI is becoming questionable to me. And so I think that as these companies are trying to define it, it's actually, it's a 3-step ahead question. It's not just how do you make sure that people can search your platform using AI, which is question number 1. It's not just how can AI search your platform for what people are looking for, but why does somebody need to come to your platform in order to go where they need to go? Because fundamentally, if Pinterest is serving up something on behalf of the advertisers that are leaving the platform right now, what is to say that those advertisers are not just directly going to go to wherever those eyeballs have moved? And I think that's the biggest acquisition challenge is a user. It's a user acquisition challenge right now, Naman.
And it's a user
And
retention
I think
challenge.
that 3-step issue is the challenge that platforms are going to face in the age of AI.
Your deep customer relationships are your moat. And so you have to provide such an elevated user experience. There has to be such trust in your brand. There has to be like such lack of friction in the experience on Pinterest that like as a user, like I'm going to continue to go to Pinterest as opposed to going to ChatGPT. Like Pinterest is way prettier than ChatGPT. Pinterest shows you pictures. Pinterest like is a better user experience, but like I'm not the kind of user that like cares about the visual. I'm just like, give me 5 bullet points, right? And so like, but there's a broad swath of the user base out there that's like ChatGPT is not going to work for me because it's primarily text based right now, and so like you have to differentiate the user experience in such a way to where people are going to continue to come to you. I think Pinterest is a prime acquisition target. I think it's a prime acquisition target for a larger social media company. I think it's a prime acquisition target for like a potential AI platform out there that wants to integrate shopping into its suite of offerings. It would be, to me, much easier to buy it versus build it. And with the capital that these guys are raising, especially with the share price drop yesterday, I would think that Pinterest is going to be in a pretty attractive valuation. And you're not even buying the user base; you're just buying the technology. You're buying the platform itself. You're buying perhaps some of the advertiser relationships that Pinterest has built over the last decade plus. You bring them over, you integrate them. It's obviously easier said than done, but it wouldn't shock me at all if Pinterest is acquired in the next 12 to 18 months.
I think that it's a fascinating idea. And actually, earlier you saw that competitors of Pinterest for those same eyeballs that we're talking about, like Google, have dabbled in the build mode. And so build versus buy is a common question that folks are asking. And Google, as an example, will often follow that playbook. They'll attempt to build it. They'll figure out kind of where their technology limitations are as a process of evaluating an acquisition target. And so that was kind of their YouTube playbook. That's been their playbook for a number of the different pieces of what they've done, is that they've tried to say, hey, we think that this is important to us. We can identify the case. Maybe we can build it ourselves. And it's possible, Naman, that they might be able to, and that chatbots will overwhelm the need for the platform. I just want to go back to something that I said earlier, because I think this is a key sticking point. I don't need what Pinterest provides me. I need Pinterest in order for it to become relevant in the new era. So if Pinterest is just a content provider to a chatbot or a content provider to an AI search function, it's only an intermediary. I have to go to Pinterest to aggregate something, right? So there has to be the trust factor that you talked about, but I think ultimately a new interface can build that quite quickly with some of these folks in the back end, just directly with the same providers that Pinterest built it with. So I think the question is, why do I need to go to Pinterest to do that middle step, right? And we think about this, I think, with our own business, right? Why does somebody need to come to us? Not just to get the information, right? So if the information or the idea is the tip of the iceberg, what about the experience is the sticking point of being on Pinterest? Because fundamentally, like, everyone can just go around you if there's not something that you have to do in an aggregator mode on Pinterest. If there's something that you don't have to do to deepen that kind of understanding or customer relationship, you don't have to finish a design on Pinterest. So if it's just 3 ideas here or there and Pinterest is only one of your sources, it becomes less relevant in that new world.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to it. Just as you're talking, I'm thinking one of the reasons I might need Pinterest is because what these LLMs are going to do is they're always going to point me to like Wayfair and Home Depot. Like if we're talking about furniture, my use case, right? Like
Correct.
they're always going to point me to the big boys. But what about the creator on Etsy? What about like my wife has her own boutique jewelry brand? Like ChatGPT is not pointing me to my wife's brand, but like, you know what? You could discover my wife's brand on Pinterest. And so like if you are looking for like off the beaten path products, if you are like a small to medium sized business, the treasure hunt, it's why people go to Costco every week, even if they don't necessarily need like a massive grocery haul, because they know that there's new inventory there that's not going to be there for long. So like, can I find the furniture that the rest of my friends don't have because they're all buying from Wayfair? Can I find the pair of earrings that the rest of my friends don't have because they're all going to Kendra Scott? And so like that kind of like, yes, the treasure hunt, like the off the beaten path products, that could be a niche that Pinterest still serves. And then you also are maybe able to build an advertiser base from those small and medium sized businesses because they're looking for visibility and they're not going to be able to afford that visibility on a ChatGPT search, for example.
Absolutely. One of the things that we haven't talked about here is that Google really democratized small business advertising. ChatGPT has the potential to do the same thing, but it's likely that it won't happen in any of these initial iterations. And that was one of my questions about the density of ad spend on Pinterest, right? I don't know that I want to actually just pay for ads on Pinterest as a small to medium business, but paying for links, paying for a direct connection, paying for something trackable. And again, they may already have this capability, and it may be something that as a small business I could do. The businesses that I own, wine and digital products, are not Pinterest businesses, right? But maybe that's something that you could have a conversation with your wife about, because perhaps that is a market space. There is also potentially a SaaS model embedded inside the Pinterest base that has never really been leveraged or monetized, but that could become an emphasis in the future.
I also think that Pinterest has the opportunity to maybe become a tastemaker again. I think what they've done in the past is they've facilitated the exploration. And so like people who went viral on Pinterest became tastemakers, but Pinterest itself didn't become the tastemaker. But like, what if like Pinterest had like a curated board for fashion, for jewelry, for this, for that, and as a smaller medium sized business, like I could pay to be a part of that board, right? Like that.
The Oprah's.
Exactly, but it's the Pinterest recommended, right? And so like I think like that's the way they're going to have to start thinking. You have to start shaping the conversation, not just facilitating it.
It's good. That was what I was talking about. You put better words to it when I was saying like you can't just be the intermediary. You actually have to be you have to be an essential tool in the process. And I think what you're saying is that like I have to have a relationship not with the people on Pinterest, but with Pinterest itself.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, if you're a Pinterest power user, tell us what we got right and what we got wrong. Tell us what you'd like to see the platform do. If you have never used Pinterest before, but you're interested to check out the experience for yourself, download the app and tell us what you think. Is it something that adds value to your shopping experience, to your product exploration? Or do you really see it as duplicative to the other platforms that you're using? We'd love to hear from you. Leave us a comment, leave us an email. Our email's in the show notes here. We'd love to hear from you, and we will see you next time on Market Outsiders. Thanks so much for joining us today.